This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask with your host, Dr. Judith Briles. On the show today, you'll find out where book publishing is going and how to take advantage of it. How to identify and avoid publishing predators. What opportunities are emerging as the book trade evolves in new forms. How to avoid losing money and much, much more. Join us now as a variety of publishing pros will deliver insights and strategies to take the author to the next level of publishing. It's your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Brought to you by Author You and The Book Shepherd. And now, here's your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
Welcome back to another edition of the Author You, your guide to book publishing podcast. And with us today is someone who is really special. He is, let's say, almost the grandfather. How do you like that? The godfather to really strategies and positions for book marketing. And I always like to lead with a quote from my book, Snappy, Sassy, Salty, Success for Authors and Writers, and around the book marketing. And it's simply this: if you choose to not market your book, you've chosen not to support it. With that said, back again, I always have him on at least twice a year, is John Kremer. He's the author of 1001 Ways to Market Your Book. It's kind of the ultimate resource. But also, John is going to mention some of his other sites that he profiles things on, he features things on. He has also his own podcast that we can talk about and get into for book strategies that I wanted to focus on for the remainder of 2024. So, John, are you game to jump into that?
I am.
Oh, good. That's good. All right. So, where would you like to start?
Well, we could actually start. I just wrote down something. Every author should have a podcast. I still believe that. I've been promoting it for a long, long time, but I still really believe that because I think it's one of the most powerful tools you have for getting the word out about yourself. And the neat thing in today's world, it's easy to create a combined audio-video podcast that you can syndicate on 40 or 50 platforms.
All right, so podcasts would be your number one. But what about, one of the things, there is a follow-up. I don't know what the stats are. Maybe you know what those stats are that deal.
Judith, you've muted yourself right when you started asking about stats.
All right, so John, the question I have deals with stats. How many people come in and start a podcast with absolutely amazing intentions? Kind of like when people were going to do a blog and then, within 6 months the blog is dead. Is there any stats on the startup for podcasts that start petering out?
Well, I don't know of any specific ones, but I do know from my own anecdotal experience that it's probably 80 or 90%.
All right. So,
they give up. It becomes too much work. It's too hard. It's every week. It's, whatever it might be. But the thing is, you don't always have to do a podcast that's going to be a forever podcast. You could do a limited edition 10-episode podcast. Some of the most popular podcasts in the world are limited podcasts. They cover a true crime case, and then once they're done covering it, the podcast is done. But it lives on in all the podcast syndication sites. It lives on in Audible, lives on in Amazon. It lives on in lots of places.
Okay, well, I like that idea. And actually, some of the news shows I'll pick up once in a while. They have both the ongoing, like in perpetuity, like ours has been, and we're 7 years old now, but also the that limited edition. Almost like just a serial book, and then it's over. And then maybe they'll come back again when they have a new serial to start up.
Yeah. And that's perfectly okay.
Right.
That's a strategy to use. And it's certainly a valid one, and it still gives you the benefits of a podcast, especially the power of syndication. And, I think that that's one of the incredible things of it is that it actually puts you on 30, 40, 50 of the major websites on the Internet, including Apple, Amazon, Audible, and Google Play, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think that sounds like a good idea. I think that actually is a good idea.
You shouldn't even think about it. It's a good idea. And the thing is that, you know the power of a podcast because you've built up the listenership for this, and you've had millions and millions of listens, and possibly views, because I know you also put it up on YouTube.
Well,
and the thing is that it allows you to not only syndicate it to all these powerful websites, but it also gives you the opportunity to exchange podcast episodes with other podcasters. And that means
you know what?
Say, I'd love to interview you. Well, I'd love to interview you for my podcast, let's say. And then but I would really like it if you would also interview me for your podcast. I think we have complementary audiences that would like to hear both of us talk on each other's podcasts.
Right.
So you could do that kind of pitch. And the thing is that podcasts, surprisingly, are still hot. The media is still right about it. The Hollywood Reporter, the movie magazine, movie and TV magazine talks about podcasts all the time. And a lot of celebrities are getting into podcasts. They're not getting into it just to die in some, vortex of anonymity. They're there because podcasting can be a powerful extension of their brand.
Well, and there's different variables. So I love the idea of, I'd like to do you, but you do me also. I think that's a great pitch strategy. All right. So what else should we be thinking about?
Well, I'm going to talk about the Book of the Month Club.
Okay.
Now, this isn't the old line Book of the Month Club, which died a sad death, and I think it was sad. I used to love the book clubs. And,
Me too.
I still wish they were around and curating great books, but they're really not doing that anymore because Amazon took over, online book selling took over, and that made a difference. And, I understand that. Things like that happen.
Well, how do we create our own Book of the Month Club? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I think that, I met somebody once in one of your seminars, and I'm still trying to track down his name now because I seem to have misplaced it in my move. But he did a Book of the Month Club. He had written 12 short books. He was a business speaker and consultant to corporations. And what he did is he wrote 12 short books. I'm talking about 96 to 128 pages, somewhere in there. And what he did is he wrote these 12 books, and then whenever he'd go out and speak or whenever he attended a convention, whenever he met somebody that might be a potential client or customer or speaking agent, he added them to his Book of the Month Club. And once a month, he mailed out real books to his prospect list. And his prospect list was about 500 people. And
a lot of books. A lot of books.
Yeah, but it not only justified him printing copies of his books, because he could do a print run of 1,000 or 2,000 if he wanted to, but it also really impacted his speaking engagements and his corporate consultations, coming in to do a program for a corporation, et cetera, et cetera. So that he ended up with, making a lot of money doing that. Now, from a business standpoint, it made perfect sense for him because he picked up all kinds of coaching clients, speaking engagements, and corporate, programs that he would do. But, you can't, if you're going to do a book, first of all, you have to write 12 books. And you can't produce junk. You have to produce real content worth reading, something that would showcase your experience and help to sell people on other products and services you have to offer. But the neat thing is that at the end of every book, of course, he had the pitch for his coaching and his speaking and his corporate programs.
All right, so now, not everyone has 12 books, but how can we make this a variation of the theme?
Okay, I was getting there. The thing is, this was designed for somebody that appealed to a business audience. But the thing is, novelists, memoir writers, cookbook authors, et cetera, could release 5 to 10 pages per week instead of releasing, a book a month, something like that. 1 chapter per month, a recipe per week, something like that. They could email it out. They could podcast out the episodes. They could even do YouTube videos. I just ran across an old friend of mine, Peggy Glenn, who's now doing videos under the name Grandma Potty Mouth.
Uh-oh.
and she does recipes. Okay. And she's a little spicy, but they're entertaining. They're fun. She enjoys it, and she actually got a book deal with a New York publisher to publish a cookbook.
Okay. So you never.
But it wouldn't be that hard for any author, regardless of what kind of book they're writing, to do a book of the month club or pages per week club or something like that, chapter a month club, or recipe a week club, something like that, which as you collect email addresses and so on, you start to email out to them the episodes, the posts, or just the pages that you're releasing that month or that week. And that could be incredibly powerful because, one, it means that you don't have to invent new content for your email every week. You can simply be podcasting a book or emailing out a book a few pages at a time. And this can be, probably the classic case of this is the novel, The Martian, which he originally released as blog posts. And it became so popular that he ended up getting a contract with a major publisher to publish the book, and of course it got made into a movie, and he ended up making millions of dollars on what began as a simple blog.
Let's come back. We'll talk about Andy Weir when we come back. Let's take our first break. And actually, Andy Weir did publish the book as a whole book before New York picked it up.
Yeah, I know. I just skipped that step.
You just skipped it. All right. We'll be right back. With me is John Kremer.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Is there a book in you? Or another? Author U shows you how to create, develop, and publish your book without being hoodwinked. If you already have a book out, you will find a supportive and brainstorming community that is connected and creative, no matter where you live. Author U brings in national experts for its book camps and annual Author U extravaganza. It has regular meetings and delivers webinars for its members on timely topics. Through Author U's extensive network, Members enjoy exclusive benefits, including significant discounts for a variety of services necessary to publishing. Author U is the premier authoring resource in the country, creating community, education, guidance, vision, and success for the serious author. If you want to create a book that has pizzazz, punch, and panache, Author U is for you. Timely author and publishing tips and articles are posted on its social media platforms, and it is free. Discover Author U, where authors go to become seriously successful. Join Author U today at authoru.org.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
All right. So John brought up Andy Weir's The Martian, and then he's had several other books that have done extraordinarily well under his relationship with now a New York major publisher on that. And actually, my John and I watched The Martian last weekend again, thinking of that.
Oh, cool.
And that's when I decided if I'm ever going to get into deep trouble, deep drama, I want Matt Damon to come get me, because Hollywood and the government will put in any man to bail out this guy that's in a movie. At least that's the plot in it. Anything Matt Damon's in, he gets rescued. So I decided Matt Damon's got to be in my life somehow. All right. So with that said, I love the idea of rolling out chapters of even old books, started out, even though they're up there. It's it's kind of like your version of look inside your book. And
Right.
It may be by the time they get to whether you do it, you could do it weekly. I mean, if we're talking fiction, you may have 50 chapters that it could be by the time they get to the 10th chapter, they're just going to, I'm just going to go buy the book so I can get through this book on that.
That's what Andy's readers started saying. Hey, come on, Andy, finish the book. We want to read it.
Yeah. So, and we're back talking about The Martian now. So that is one of the things you might want to consider doing is you've already got books in hand. All right. So let's kind of start spicing it out and just making, and tying it in, as this podcast is going to be released in the fall time of 2024, but we're really talking about things for you to be thinking about doing, actually in perpetuity, frankly. But to get things going, this would be a great deal because this is October and November, the huge sales months for a lot of books out there. And you might want to take advantage of it. John, you said something else about printing, the printing of books, that a lot of authors don't realize there is a sweet spot number. I mean, the print on demand is actually for the indie small press market. That's the preferred choice. But if you really are going to do a game plan that you're going to be pushing out some book, or if you are a speaker, once you print and the cross point is 1,000 and 1,500 copies, you will see prices dramatically drop in your cost per unit. And once you pass 1,500, they don't drop so much. You would think, well, if I order 5,000, they're really going to come down. No, not necessarily. So, but 1,000 is the sweet spot in the printing market still today out there.
Yeah, and that's partially because, so many printers decided to specialize in short runs, and so they're economically designed to do that. And it really does make a difference. It's really nice to have a book in your hand to get that. So, so many people, they sell the ebook on Amazon, and they don't go any further. The neat thing is on Amazon Kindle, you can do a paperback and a hardcover as well. And they actually encourage you to do those now, and an audio. an AI-generated audio that's actually not bad.
Yep, and you have to go in. And Amazon, we're seeing Amazon, if they see some sales and traction going on, they actually will reach out to you and say, hey, we'd like to do the AI for you with no cost. What do you think? And that's happening a lot.
Yeah, they've actually emailed me on that. So I haven't done it yet, but I certainly want to.
Yep, I've got clients have. Yeah.
Yeah, it really can make a powerful difference to have different versions of your book. And you'll be surprised how many people still like print books.
Well, most of them. Now, I'm going to be in a bookstore this coming weekend. I have several all-day book signings coming up. And let's talk about book signings a little bit. Typically, authors don't sell a lot of books at a book signing. It's still like 4 to 6. You can goose it up, everyone. I never sell less than 40 books at a book signing. But I don't stay just for 2 hours. I decide I'm going to park myself there. And I'm going to greet people as they come in. And I've got swag with me and all kinds of stuff. But to me, that's part of the author job, that I will take a couple of days a month and I will be pitch girl. And I work with bookstores on that. And once bookstores start seeing you sell books, guess what? Staff recommends your books. It's kind of a good thing. Any thoughts there, John?
Well, I think I like to always combine it with actually speaking. And, because obviously if you speak and people hear you speaking and then you send them up to buy your book, they're going to buy it because they want your autograph because they like what you said. Mm-hmm. There's one thing, and this is something that fits into this as well as fits into the Book of the Month Club idea. Authors are too often afraid to give away their book. And I really think it's important to get rid of that mindset, because I think in some ways giving away pieces of your book, or even in your talk, to actually give ideas from your book instead of saying, answering the question, well, it's in the book.
Ooh.
I think that's the worst answer you can possibly give. And
I am so with you. And in fact, it pisses me off when people do that. And I remember having an author on this podcast, and she says, and she kept saying, well, in my book, you will find. And when we went to the commercial break, I told her to knock it off. And I said, give them.
If you had been able to reach out, you would have spanked her.
Yeah, exactly. Can you feel that slap
or slapped her wrist? Because you have to share. If people don't, if they don't, especially if they don't know you, they're not going to buy a book sight unseen. They want to hear some of the content. They want to see some of the content. They want to taste it. So they want to have the opportunity to know that your book is worthwhile spending money on it. And so I think giving out a taste, or even giving away, for novelists, I say, give away your first book, because I know you got 3 more books in you. I don't know any novelist other than Harper Lee and Margaret Mitchell that don't have, a dozen novels in their heart and soul.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best ways to market the second novel is to give the first novel away.
That's right. I found, here's a little trick I found when I've been in bookstores. I know you love tricks. And it just happened to roll out of my mouth. It wasn't planned. I hadn't thought about it. But it just happened, one of those serendipity things. And I'm in a bookstore, and I have a fiction book, one called The Secret Journey. This is a historical fantasy fiction. And book 2 is The Secret Hamlet. And book 3, we're almost finished, The Secret Rise. And book 2, when people meet you for the first time, even though you have maybe a series of books, they usually want to start with book 1. And if they like it, they'll come back to the trough. So that I was in a bookstore, and I typically tell a bookstore, get 20 to 25 copies of this book, do about, a dozen. I learned not to do 20 to 25 of book 2, yet get like dozen of the second, because we'll outsell 2 to 1, the first in the series. And that we were, I sold out. I sold to the table, which is what you want to do. Sell to the table. And they're gone. And people will say, well, I really would like to start with book 1. And I don't know what possessed me, John, but I said, how would you like to read book 1 for free if you buy book 2? Okay, that got their attention. So then I'm thinking, now what are you going to say, Judith? Okay, so I said, do you ever read ebooks? Do you ever read ebooks? Oh, yeah, I do read ebooks. Are you on Amazon's Kindle? Well, I am. And I said, buy a book. Let me sign book 2 for you and go up on Kindle Unlimited and download book 1 for free. Ta-da. Within 5 minutes, I sold another 5 books of book 2.
Yeah.
So, little variances on the theme is what you have to do. But I'd like to add for people when they're wherever they are, because speaking, I think all authors should be speaking on their books. It's the number one way to really push them out there, is that whatever swag, if you're going to have postcards or bookmarks, because John said, mentioning, you can do hardback, you can do paperback, you can do audiobook, you can do, an ebook. I think it's really smart, John, to put on whatever bookmarks you have. And I believe you give those away like candy. I put them in every book, that it says on there available in print and audio on that. And I think that, because a lot of people say, I only read ebooks. And if you're selling paper-related books, well, you can say, here is the ebook. Would you like the bookmark that you can go back and read a little bit more about it, and then you can order it on wherever you get your ebooks. And it works every time.
Well, for my wife, it's real important because she really can't read now. And so she listens to books all the time, and she just loves listening. And so, we belong to Audible, and, she buys audiobooks all the time. And, it's because that's how she can consume it. And I do the same thing, because when I'm driving, I love listening to books.
Oh, there you go.
I still like the old-fashioned CDs myself, but, nowadays, a lot of times it might be an MP3 or something like that you're listening to. And certainly that's possible. I know one church that gives away their sermons as MP3s, as audios, as videos, as high-definition videos. And, they get an incredible number of downloads and donations that way.
And you have to figure out who the who is. Who are you writing for, everyone? Because that's the key thing to marketing. I think John will agree to that. You got to know who you're writing for. How do we reach out to them? Any thoughts along and building that? I know, John, we're coming up to our next break here in about a minute. But could we start that? So finding the who's, because they do hang out in a lot of different places.
Yeah. In fact, that's one of the key ways to market.
All right. Well, so what would be the first step?
Reaching out to influencers in your topic area.
All right, then we'll talk about that. How do we find the influencers?
Okay, I thought we were going to a break, so
No. I had a minute. So we're going to set. We could set the stage. How's that?
So you can find influencers in your topic area. If you don't know who they already are, you're probably not writing in the right topic, because you should be a fan of that topic if you're writing in it. Like, I think it's terrible to write science fiction if you've never read science fiction. I think it's terrible to write a business book if you don't read business books, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a crucial element in researching your audience, researching your topic, and making your book 10 times better.
I'm so glad we're gonna jump on our break right now, but I am so glad you just started on this. We'll be right back with John Kremer, We're going to build your influence base. This is Judith Briles.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Discover the power of you and your book at the Judith Briles Unplugged events. Each summer, Judith Briles Book Marketing Unplugged unfolds over 3 intensive days working with just Judith. You get publishing strategies, author and book platforms, book marketing panache and pizzazz, and authoring tools to take you and your book to rock star success. In the fall and winter, Judith Briles Speaking Unplugged includes Judith as your coach and mentor during 2 powerful days. You will learn how to structure a speech, how to create openings and closings, how to find gigs that pay you and sell your books, and you will get one-on-one coaching. Go to thebookshepherd.com and click on the Events tab to learn how to participate at the next Unplugged Workshop event.
Congratulations on getting your book published. The effort you put into your work is truly commendable. But what's next? What will happen to all the knowledge you have worked so hard to acquire to produce your book? Here at TogiNet Radio, we can provide you a platform to keep your knowledge working for you through the power of podcast. The subjects our podcasts cover are as varied as the grains of sand on a beach. From life coaching to military resources to business success, even to the paranormal. We have a place for everyone. To get started on your next step, call Scott at 903-787-5880 or email him at scott@toginetradio.com. That's SCOTT at TOGINETRADIO.com.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Coming up, you'll hear more about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
All right. So, John, you started off as we exited the last segment on the key influencers. I can't tell you how many times I talk with authors and I ask them who are their competitors. Well, one said back to me, this is like this last Saturday, well, I don't have any competitors. I said, what BS? What BS? And, she just looked at me startled. And I said this in front of 10 other people. That is total BS. We all have competitors. We could say what other comparable authors. We could be politically correct and say comparable authors. But who is competing for your services? Who is competing for your wisdom? Who's out there trying to get people to buy their books that have storylines in your genre? Those are your competitors. That's where I started with. So
I don't actually call them competitors. I call them friends or potential friends.
All right. And they can become friends.
Yeah, I mean, back when I started out, Dan Poynter had written the self-publishing manual. Well, he sold thousands of copies of my 1001 Ways to Market Your Books. I sold thousands of copies of his self-publishing manual. I did the same for Tom and Marilyn Ross in their complete guide to self-publishing. I didn't see them as competitors at all. I saw them as people that were offering great content, and I could sell their content. So one of the first things you should do is, ask them, can you sell their books? And certainly through the Amazon affiliate program, you can do it that way. But if you create your own catalog that you send out to customers when you mail out your books, which is how I created my catalog, and that's the only people that got my catalog, but I still ended up selling thousands of other people's books because when people got my book through me, They also got a listing of other books that I sold, I carried, actually stocked in-house, and shipped out to people when they ordered.
Mm-hmm. All right. So
I really think that potential competitors should be cooperating with each other. I think one of the best things the writers can do is work together with other people writing similar books to reach out to the audience and expand each of their audience.
Oh, and because you know what you're kissing on without saying the word? You're talking about the audience is super fans. There are people who are super fans. I did a whole podcast on super fans. And who are these unique animals out there? Well, number one, they're mostly women, but they devour anything in the genre because they read at least a book a week. They're always on the prowl looking for new things. So why not have a collective? Maybe we have a cooperative collective. I just wrote that word down. Of like genre books and offering it. Now, I don't know. I don't want to do any more. I used to do a lot of that, John. I have to tell, for when we were really in the physical book selling from ourselves, when I was speaking all over the world, and I went to work. I said, "Oh yeah, I go to work on United Airlines because with my travel and what I had, I could carry 3 70-pound boxes of books with me, and that's like $5,000 every time I went out. That's like $5,000 worth of retail price that I would sell at least. And if it was any bigger, it would be bigger. But I was out and about, and we had, I would have at any one time maybe $100,000 of inventory in my garage. Stacks there, very organized stack. Okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I still want to do that anymore. But if Amazon still has what do they call their program? Do you remember what they call it?
Well, they have a program, and I'm not remembering the name right now, but one where you can actually get discounts or referral fees. Not just
you get a discount,
fees, but you can actually recommend a book, offer a discount, and still get a referral fee for doing it. So you could create collections that weren't just your book, but could be the books of other participating authors. And so you could create a 10-book collection or a 5-book collection and sell that to the customers.
So for me, with what I do, with what you could have the author marketing success collection. I could do something with marketing. I could do something with publishing, something along the line with that. But also it could be, since I'm now writing in this historical fantasy fiction, I could now pull in the fantasy fiction. And if you're putting those out, now let's go back up to John's Book of the Month Club idea, that you could create something probably without a lot of difficulty that you could just do as a mailer out. And if they use your link, if they go to Amazon, I've got to figure out which way it goes, but it's probably you have a click link off of where you're going, that you would automatically get that credit on Amazon and eventually a referral fee. So
yeah. And the thing is, it can be a major source of income for authors if they actually start sharing on a regular basis, and their audience, their superfan audience, picks up on it. Like when we first started talking about the Book of the Month Club, we both said we miss them because they were curating things. And, there's still room for curators. And so, like for you, science fiction, you could be curating the classics or the new classics and doing something like that, or the techno classics or the steampunk classics or whatever category you're in. And you would end up probably generating an entirely new audience just from that. I mean, I could see you doing a science fiction podcast that interviews your favorite authors and promotes their books. Any author can do that. So you don't, when authors tell me, well, I can't think of anything to podcast about, I'm going, duh. All you have to do is interview people. Just interview your favorite authors. Mm-hmm. And, that alone, and it's guilt by association. I mean, if you start interviewing some famous authors, you, by, association, start to become famous. You start to become well known. Their audience starts to seek you out because they say, wow, this person seems to know what they're talking about.
Well, I actually, we were saying this. I love the classics. I have actually written that down and put a little star and doing it. And I know I created a new website to start off just for my books, because my Book Shepherd website has so much on it, in which your websites also have a lot on it, John, that to just do it for fans of my books and doing it out. And I'm actually, out of it has come a cookbook, because I give recipes away to people. You sign up, you get a bunch of recipes, some of my original recipes. So now we're putting it together as a cookbook. So.
And the thing is that, that kind of thing is kind of fun, isn't it? To sort of expand what you're doing and to help other people, to talk to people, to be able to talk to the people you really love reading. I mean, back in the day, I would have loved to have interviewed Isaac Asimov or Jerry Pournelle or some of those people that. And the thing is, I went to a couple of World Science Fiction conventions and actually got to sit down with them and talk to them. So you could easily go to the next World Science Fiction convention and record a whole year's worth of podcasts.
You actually probably could. I mean, I will remember and it's not sci-fi I write in. It's fantasy historical fiction, but and then I'm doing
the World Science Fiction.
It's the same thing. Oh yeah. The science, fantasy, sci-fi, but historical fiction has its own categories. Women's fiction, which is huge now, has its own categories, and friendship and the sagas. I mean, you look at the breakdowns of what people are looking for. It's like family sagas. They want to read about these families that go out forever, but everyone ends up doing. I mean, there's a whole group waiting for you out there. And John, you're talking about having dinner. One of my favorite dinners was with Ray Bradbury. So. Now you're going back to Fahrenheit 451.
We're going to burn the books.
We had an amazing, delightful evening, and I still quote him from that time 40 years ago. I still quote things that he said to me that are so embedded, in our discussion. So it's very cool. Anyway, all right,
and the thing is, if you go to the science fiction or the fantasy conventions or the steampunk conventions or the mystery conventions and so on, you get an incredible opportunity to network with people and so on. I actually tell most authors, you should go to a writing convention or conference in your area. It's a great place to meet people.
It is. One of the things I regretted, I mean, you and I speak at different conferences, and I spoke at one of the cons, one of the sci-fi cons. And if you've ever been to any of you, people dress to the nines. I mean, and I'm talking about full face makeup, body makeup, costume. You cannot believe it. And I was doing a program like on creativity or something, writing for this group, for some of the attendees. And to this day, I regret that no one had thought about taking a picture from behind with me speaking to all the aliens that were in my audience. It was such a cool
in the World Science Fiction Convention, the big event, the highlight of the convention was the prizes given out to the people on the costume night. And they dressed to the nines, as you said. And I know at Comic-Con, I don't know if you know Greg Odek. Yeah, Greg Odek, he's author of 1001 Ways to Be Romantic. He and his wife are Comic-Con fans. They live in the San Diego area, and they just go to it every year. And they just dressed in the nines, as you said. They just love doing that.
Yep. Well, I know Greg and Karen very well. So that is, but, I'd love to hop back because we're talking about influencers again. There were people out there that could be so beneficial to you in your marketing if you're, and it's not an ask of them, hey, would you sell my books? It's a conversation that you start off. It's getting to know you. If they're already authors, or they're podcasters, I'd love to have you on my podcast. And how about scheduling me on your podcast? I mean, that's really where the influence factor starts growing. So if
I'll give you one secret. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. We have one more minute to our next break, so go ahead.
Okay. Well, Tim Ferriss, before he published the 4-Hour Work Week, spent the year before that going to conventions and asking all these internet marketers, well, what can I do for you? And I think that's a great way to start the conversation with a lot of influencers. And he did that. He'd take them out to dinner, he'd take them out for drinks and so on. By the time his book was published, he had all these internet marketers who loved doing 4-hour work weeks promoting his book. So he was interviewed up the yin-yang, and his book became a bestseller before the TV picked up on it and started having him and creating even more impact.
And which is exactly what happened. All right, with me is John Kremer. He's the author of 1001 Ways to Market Your Books. We're going to take our final break, and then I want John to talk about some of the things that he's doing on the marketing side that be helpful for you.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Are you confused about publishing options? Do you know which printing option is best for your book? Does your stomach flip when you think about selling books? Or do you feel overwhelmed with what to do about book marketing and publicity? Get the answers and much more. Get them and from someone who knows publishing inside and out from both the traditional and independent sides, how to make a successful book. You can't do it alone without paying the price. You can spend your money creating a book that turns out to be so-so, or you can create a book that looks and feels classy, builds your brand and platform, and is a success, a bestseller. It is your choice. You choose. If you want author and publishing success, you want Judith Briles as your book coach. Sign up for her weekly blogs and e-zine at thebookshepherd.com. The book shepherding concept is simple. The publishing world is changing, and so must you. You need an experienced shepherd and guide to collaborate with you as you create, strategize, develop, publish, and achieve your publishing goals. Publishing is riddled with obstacles, sometimes nightmares for the author. You do not need more problems. You want solutions. Dr. Judith Briles will shepherd you through the maze and chaos. At times, she has had to step in and rescue a book that has been sabotaged by a publisher, by a publishing service provider, and sometimes even by the author. If you want author and book success, connect with her today at thebookshepherd.com.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
All right, John, we've got about 12 minutes. I want you to recommend you've got multiple websites. I know you changed it. You have New Things Go. I've done your how to get 1,000 eyeballs on your books, or you got a workshop, something like that, right? Or how to get 10,000 eyeballs on your books. Yeah.
Right.
So how can we get people to get 10,000 eyeballs on there? And what websites or like what webinars do you have going on, or your podcasts should they be listening to?
Well, they should be listening to my Book Marketing Success podcast, which if they sign up for my newsletter, they automatically get each podcast episode as well. So I use Substack as my newsletter provider because they allow me to do newsletters, paid newsletters, podcasts, and video all in one platform. I like that.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's actually free, so I really like that. And Substack makes its money when you get paid subscribers. So on my newsletter, I have an upsell that if you want additional content and attention, pay for the subscription. And
what do you pay? What do you charge for that? What do you charge for that?
$70 a year or $9 a month.
Okay, because I know I have a couple of people I pay. It's a $5 a month thing, and I just it's easy and I like it.
Yeah, and it's a really neat thing to give that opportunity for people to upgrade if they want to become a stronger supporter, a super fan, a part of your street team, things like that. And, one of the key things you should do, any author should do if they want 10,000 eyeballs is create a street team. That means people that really want to go out there and do something for you. And, there's an incredible article on my website on, 50 things you can do for authors you love.
Oh, I love that. And, so let's kiss on some of those.
Yeah, and so I wrote the article. I originally stole the idea from somebody else, and I give her credit. Eileen Flanagan, she was the author of The Wisdom to Know the Difference. She wrote a blog post a number of years ago telling friends, book authors, how they could help authors sell more books. And, so she had a list of, I think, 5 or 10 ways. And then I expanded from it. And, of course, the best thing you can do for a friend is buy the book.
Yeah.
And actually, have them autograph it to you. Give your friend's book away is the second thing. Then you could actually recommend people, tell people in your social media, hey, my friend just released a book and it's available at the local Barnes & Noble or local Tattered Cover or wherever. I love supporting local bookstores, so I love sending people to the independent bookstores. And, they're everywhere nowadays. They're still, surprisingly, the independent bookstores, even with Amazon, have actually done pretty well, but they've done it by servicing their community.
Well, I don't know if you followed that, but that I have a great partnership with Barnes & Noble. And when the new CEO came in a couple of years ago, his whole drive was you service the community. And we saw a big change at BNN that actually outperformed a lot of the independents. Actually, so and which was great.
That's one of the great things that Barnes & Noble did is they really increased their outreach program. I remember talking to a lady in the outreach program in Barnes & Noble in Hollywood, and she said, we do so much outreach to educators and teachers and so on. So they sell a ton of children's books because they reach out to people. And, that's part of what you need to do. Another thing that you could do to help your friend is just tell them what you like about their book. As authors, we don't hear it enough about how much people like our books. And, it's a nice thing to do. Give them a testimonial. Help them get speaking engagements. In my book, 1001 Ways, I did the old in my book thing. But I told the story of Callan Pinckney, and she wrote a book, Callanetics. And she was getting nowhere, even though she was published by a major New York publisher. But a housewife in Naperville, Illinois said, I want to meet you. She tracked down her phone number, called her up and said, when are you coming to Chicago? And she said, well, if I get on TV, I'll come. And this housewife in Naperville called back an hour later and said, I got you on the local TV show in WOS or something, in Chicago. I'll pick you up at the airport. And it was surprising that, from that little beginning, suddenly Callan was getting invitations to Indianapolis, Dayton, Columbus, all kinds of small Midwestern towns that, or cities that the publisher was ignoring altogether.
John,
despite the great efforts of the publisher, it became a bestseller.
Well, I love, number one, I love that. It's the great unefforts of the publisher is really what it is.
Yes.
But that so many people think that, oh, no, I've got to be on Today or Good Morning America or Fox and Friends or fill in the blank, that they forget about the power of the second and third tier of radio, of TV, of some of just the local things that people will turn into. When I think about, I just had someone, two weird things happened to me this last week. And it was on the same night, two different total people. I don't even think they even know anyone, but they were in my house at our local hood gathering where 50 people came by, and they bring hors d'oeuvres and desserts, and it's just for chatter. It's the neighborhood chatter. And I was host. And one person started off, and she said, I attended a conference on quality and safety or something, and there was a speaker, and I have this handout, and it was by Judith Briles. Is that you? And I said, yes, that was me. And I did speak at that conference. The second thing, you never know, and we're talking about 30 years ago. This is a 30-year ago thing. The other thing, in the little local, I'm a big fan of supporting the weeklies who are getting less and less. The weeklies, and someone said, I loved reading the article about the $15,000 scholarships you just gave out to aspiring authors. That is so great. You never know where these little tidbits are going to hit people out there and show up. And it was that we did a press release and we sent it to the local weekly, and they picked it up. So
yeah, and Joanna Lund did Heart Healthy Cookbooks the Midwestern way, and she sold 30,000 copies in Iowa. That outsold the Bible in Iowa that year. She did it by just appearing on local TV shows, local newspapers, local. You couldn't turn on the TV without seeing her somewhere. And as a result of that, she got picked up by QVC and became the best-selling author on QVC. She sold millions of copies to them.
Oh, I love stories like that. See, you never know. And I think sometimes authors make a mistake in their marketing, thinking, I'm going to immediately sell 1 million books. No, you're not. Get over that. But you could sell a lot of books. And you do it in a series of like marathons, one step in front of the other at a time as you go through this. I think that's what impairing. All right, so John, we've got a few minutes left. I would like to have some kind of you mentioned your book marketing success podcast. So the website, your website is that people could go to and get find goodies?
Bookmarketingbestsellers.com.
Book marketing bestsellers. All right. So, and remember, all of you, that people think that you've got to be a bestseller, you have to be on the New York Times. No, you don't. You can be a bestseller in so many places that are out there. There's, you could have your local list. Realize a lot of regional places, whether it's Chicago or San Francisco or, LA, or, I'm in Denver, that we have local bestseller lists that maybe 3 or 4 bookstores, both mainstream and indies, report into their top 10 books, fiction, nonfiction. It's very common. You can work it, and I'm all for driving people to your local bookstores because I love them and I think you should support them. And make them your partner. Why not turn them into a super fan for you, and drive people to go there to get their books? You could end up on the bestseller list. And by the way, let me tell you, the reps from New York monitor those regional bestseller lists. You never know. And what I'm hearing more and more of, John, is that the New York houses, as they consolidate and shrink and reduce the services they really do for authors, they're not the way they used to be 20 years ago that they have under their signage, that they're looking for shortcuts to find authors who seem to be connecting. And you could be doing it via the back door. I just want to say that before we end.
Well,
all right.
The first question most editors ask you at a publishing company is, who's your audience and how big is your personal audience?
Mm-hmm. And you better know that, everybody. We're back to where we started an hour ago. Who's your who? Who is your true who? Where do they hang out? How are you building your relationships with your who? I think those are essential for marketing. You want to add anything onto that in our last 45 seconds, John?
Well, the primary job of a book author is to create word of mouth. Get it going, because 80% of books are sold by word of mouth. Somebody telling somebody else, I love this book, or I'm reading this great book, or whatever it might be. And that really still is happening today. It's happening more online now, but it's still happening. I mean, when I used to work in the office in downtown St. Paul, I'd walk in the Skyway system at noon, and every lady there, every secretary, every administrative assistant, etc., was reading a book, and it was often the same book.
Oh, yeah. They had their own little book club without realizing that. All right. With that, John Kremer, thank you so much for being with us this past hour. And we will have you back after the first of the year to say, okay, things to kickstart for the new year of 2025. How's that?
That'll be great.
All right, everyone. Have a great week. Happy writing, and definitely happy marketing.
Thank you for being a part of Your Guide to Book Publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. Each week, a variety of publishing pros will deliver insights and strategies to take you, the author, to the next level. You'll learn tips and secrets on how to create, strategize, develop, publish, and achieve book publishing success by making one very simple change in your book's journey. How to avoid the publishing predators. How to create an author and book platform that rocks. Learn how to make a living with your words and your books. Learn how to publish a book that has no regrets, and so much more. For more information, check out AuthorU.org, where authors who want to be seriously successful go. And Judith's website, thebookshepherd.com. Then join us again here next week for more. It's Your Guide to Book Publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. Brought to you by Author You and the Book Shepherd. Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific on the Rockstar Radio Network.